The greatest no-win situation in human history is now to express a public opinion about China, especially as it relates to Hong Kong or Taiwan. So you take the recent backlash against Lebron James, who is the first NBA player to publicly comment on Daryl Morey's tweet supporting freedom and democracy and the protesters in Hong Kong. So this puts me in a precarious position because my business, my marriage, and my why exists at the intersection between Western values and Chinese values. And the safe choice is just to avoid these topics altogether, which most savvy business people have done for the sake of doing business in China. Or it's to acquiesce, as every major brand has done, from Apple's to Tiffany's. But I cannot stay silent. So how can I express my position without offending either 1.4 billion people on one side or the rest of the free world on the other side? And does just asking this question already offend someone? I'm sure it does. So my position on these polarizing issues, I guess, goes something like this. I am an American. I am an American-born Chinese, so I am also Chinese. And I'm proud of my Chinese heritage, our place in history, philosophy, art, and innovation. Now, most Taiwanese people are Chinese, except for maybe the indigenous Taiwanese, but they just represent only 3% of the population. Most residents in Hong Kong are also Chinese. Their ancestry didn't change after colonialization by the British Empire. But what I think has changed is their fundamental belief on what people of this planet should aspire towards. Okay. There are overseas Chinese all over the world, and we all share many Chinese values and traditions, regardless of what generation our parents or grandparents immigrated to a new world and by what means. And what all this says is that we are all Chinese. But being Chinese should be apolitical. And maybe that is my final point. I am an American-born Chinese. I am ABC. Hi, my name is Gene Chu. What I wanted to talk about is the greatest no-win situation, I think, in the history of humanity. And that is basically to express a public opinion about China, especially as it relates to Hong Kong or Taiwan. And I think the perfect illustration of this is the backlash of Lebron James, who is the first and so far the only NBA player to express his opinion about Daryl Morey's tweet supporting freedom and democracy and the protesters in Hong Kong. So this entire kind of no-win situation puts me in a very precarious position because my business, my marriage, and my why is at the intersection between Western and Chinese values. It's very difficult. So business people, the best thing to do if you're doing business in China is basically just to keep quiet, not express an opinion, because there's really no winning scenario for you to actually express an opinion. Or if you have inadvertently expressed a position or expressed an opinion, then the general solution is just to acquiesce. Okay, so major global brands from Apple to Tiffany's have done this. Basically, reverse positions and acquiesce when they have quote unquote offended people in China for whatever position or advertisement they may have done. So for me to say that I am quote unquote an expert in doing business in China, it's really difficult for me to stay silent. But again, these topics are kind of the most divisive no-win situations that you can put yourself in. And of course, Lebron James is experiencing a lot of backlash from Western media, but he basically expressed an opinion probably more in support of the players' positions. And obviously, the players' financial and economic livelihood is dramatically affected by what they're able to do in China. But all of that aside, what is my position? So my first position is that, well, first of all, I'm an American, but I am an American-born Chinese. So I also feel that I am Chinese. And so what does that mean, and where is my position on these issues? So I believe most Taiwanese are Chinese. And that is maybe except for the indigenous population of the original inhabitants of Taiwan, that would be equivalent to the Native Americans or the Indians here in North America. But other than that, everybody in Taiwan is essentially Chinese. Okay. Everybody in Hong Kong, the majority of the residents in Hong Kong are also Chinese. So the fact that Hong Kong was colonized by the British Empire before any of us was born, that doesn't change the ancestry of anybody there. Okay. But I think what has happened over the last 100 years is that the people of Hong Kong now have a different belief of what it means to be an inhabitant of this planet, and what aspirations current generations and future generations should have. And of course, that belief and the belief of the aspirations that you should have as a human being, that is kind of fundamentally what's at stake for the people in Hong Kong. But that doesn't mean they aren't Chinese, even though they don't want to be associated with the current rulers or government in mainland China. And then, of course, I'm part of a community of overseas Chinese, and we are all very kind of proud of our Chinese culture, our Chinese heritage, our place in history as far as art, philosophy, innovation. Overseas Chinese all share certain traditional Chinese beliefs and Chinese values. And it really doesn't matter when your parents or grandparents actually migrated to a different world, and by what means of how they got here to a different country under a different system of politics, under a different government. It doesn't really matter how we got to where we are today. We all believe ethnically we are Chinese. Okay. So again, that circles back to the fundamental question. I think as best I could, I tried to take a position on Hong Kong and Taiwan and what all this means. But in the larger picture, I think we are all Chinese. And I think being Chinese should be apolitical. Okay? And I think I'll just leave it at that. I am an American. I am an American-born Chinese, and I am ABC.